Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to this week's model breakdown, bets, DraftKings picks for the Wyndham Championship. So, should be a fun one. Going to be a birdie fest. If you recall from the key stat breakdown, course overview, we got a par 70, 7,100 yards, Bermuda track. So, we're going to be looking at guys who can make a lot of birdies, good with hitting fairways, basically short irons and wedges. And you got to make putts, so you got to be a good Bermuda putter this week. So we want to make sure that we are finding guys that meet that mold. So I've queued up a model. Again, still working through things. I'm usually tweaking this up until the last minute, but let's take a look and see what we got. So using Fantasy National, basically looking at key stats for the week. What I've kind of put the most weight on the model, proximity from 150 to 175 yards. If you recall, about 30% of approach shots are from that distance. 125 to 150 is the other most common. So weighting those both evenly. We've got strokes gained putting on Bermuda over the last 50 rounds, strokes gained off the tee, strokes gained approach, birdie or better, opportunities gained all over the last 24 rounds. Fairways gained over the last 24 rounds. Efficiency on par fours from 400 to 450 yards. So we got 8 of those this week, so it's almost half the holes. We got 2 long par threes, so kind of using that as a tiebreaker. And then we have 2 par fives between 500 and 550 yards. The other thing that I brought into the model, I wanted to look at strokes gained tee to green on comp courses. So Sedgefield, short Bermuda track, courses like East Lake, Harbor Town, things like that. How have folks performed recently on those courses as well, given that a little bit of weight in the model as well. So when you run things, I have a bunch of guys flagged here that I'm going to be taking a closer look at, but Ryan Armour is actually your number one golfer in the model. Now, I made the mistake of not betting Xander at the Olympics as the number one guy in my model, so I will probably take a small stab on Ryan Armour. Do I actually think he's going to win? Probably not. Hell, he could probably miss the cut, but he does rate out very well, particularly over the last 24 rounds, and he checks all the boxes that you'd like to see, right? So he's 30th in this field from 150 to 175. He's a good Bermuda putter. He's hitting a lot of fairways. He's given himself birdie looks. He's 5th in this field in efficiency on the short par fours. So a lot of things to like about Ryan Armour this week. I don't know if he has a ton of win equity. I think he only has 1 win, and I'm pretty sure it was in 2017 at like the Safeway or Sanderson Farms or something like that. So is he likely to win? No, but I don't want to be stuck in a spot where the number one guy in my model, again, it may change if I change the weights, but I will probably have some DFS exposure to Ryan Armour. I'm not going to go crazy. He's probably rating out very well in a lot of people's models just because of these stats. So tread lightly, but I may take a small stab from an outright perspective. Louis actually number 2, so I think this is a really good spot. So we talk about Webb and the narrative. He always plays well, top 5 machine here at Sedgefield. Louis playing really well. He's actually rating out much better than Webb in all of the statistical categories that you like to see. So again, I'm probably not going to bet him. I think he's only 18 to 1, and he's shown us that he has a hard time closing the door. It wouldn't shock me if he won, but I think this is a time to take some shots down the board. So I'm not going to be betting him. Going to have some DFS exposure. Hideki's number 3. Hideki, to me, again, he's the most expensive guy on DraftKings. I think from an outright perspective, he's in that like 10, 15. I think he's 14 to 1. For me, I just don't know that he can keep up in a birdie fest where you got to get to like 20, 21 under par. And the thing that's going to hold him back is the putter. So he's going to give himself a ton of looks. Again, I'm not trying to put a lot of weight on things that aren't quantifiable, but he's coming over from the Olympics. Obviously, that didn't faze him last week, but he's playing again this week. We had Patrick Reed withdraw already. It wouldn't necessarily shock me if Hideki ended up pulling out of this thing too, for the same reason. So they both played. I guess Hideki did not play the Open Championship because of COVID, but so he's a little bit more well rested. I think he's a fine play if you want to take a shot on DraftKings. I just to me, guys that so hit or miss with the putter. Bermuda is by far his worst surface. I just don't know if I can get there, but he is probably the top guy on DraftKings for a reason. Certainly not going to bet it, but could see going there in fantasy. I'm just not sure if I'm going to do it myself. Seamus Power, really interesting to me. So he's mid 8Ks on DraftKings. He, I think, is maybe 30 or 40 to 1 from a betting perspective. He's playing really well. So he's obviously coming off a win. The Barbasol, I believe. Barbasol or Barracuda. A couple weeks ago he won. We haven't seen him much since, but I think he's a really strong DraftKings play. I think he's going to make a lot of birdies. I think he's going to score. I don't know if he's going to win again here, but maybe the thing that's holding him back, like these shorter tracks, like he hasn't played as well on. But I think if you're looking for guys that are in the top half of this field, if you want a little safety in the 8K range, I think Seamus Power is probably your guy. Then you got a slew of these guys who are kind of plotter types who can't putt. So Ches Reavie, not sure what I'm going to do with him yet. I think it's a tall order to bet him. He's basically dead last in this field in Bermuda putting. Maybe this is the 1 out of 20 times that he gains putting on Bermuda, and if he does that, he's probably going to be in contention. I'm just not sure that I'm there. So I think he's 100 to 1 right now. I'm not sure that I can get there, but I will be having some exposure in fantasy. Same could be said for Kevin Streelman. Again, guy has been really good, dialed in with the irons, has played well on similar tracks. He's checking all the boxes from a stat perspective. I think the putter, again, could hold him back. Now, again, this could be the week where he gains 3-4 strokes putting and ends up winning. But he's 55 to 1. I'm not sure that he's that different than some of these other guys that are like 70, 80, 90 to 1. So, like, for me, I'm just not going to get there from a betting perspective. But at 8,300, I think he's a fine play on DraftKings. Johnny Vegas has played really well. He's gained strokes on approach in 2 straight events. He's long off the tee. He's giving himself opportunities. He's not a great Bermuda putter. I'm probably going to have some exposure. We'll check ownership because guys like Johnny Vegas, for some reason, tend to come in really high from an ownership perspective. But assuming he's moderately owned, I'll probably sprinkle him in fantasy. But I just don't know that I see this as kind of the more technical short iron wedge track. Got to make a ton of putts. That's not really the Johnny Vegas model. So I'm not sure that I'm going to get there. Certainly not from a betting perspective. Brian Harman, I think it's just the price. He's not necessarily as sharp with the irons, but does everything else that you like to see. Could make sense at 9,900, but I don't think he had a great week last week at the WGC. He was super popular, and now he's $2,000 more expensive. And again, it's a weaker field, but for me, I'll probably just be sitting out the Brian Harman experience this week, and probably will end up regretting it, but I'm just not sure that I'm there. Kyle Stanley is basically the same guy as Ches Reavie. Again, I might get some exposure in fantasy. I think Kyle Stanley finished 13th here a couple years ago. All of these plotters are the same kind of guy to me. Like, they can dial it in with the irons, but they can't make a putt to save their life. So I don't think, again, this goes back to lineup strategy. I don't think you should build a ton of lineups with, like, Stanley and Ches and all of these guys that can't putt, right? That's probably not going to come to fruition, that all of them end up catching a hot putter for the week and contending. But I certainly think you can mix them in. So may have some exposure, but that's about it. Norlander, to me, Henrik Norlander might be one of my favorite value plays. So he's rating out 10th in the model, 6,600 on DraftKings. He's 170 as an outright bet. I kind of like this. I'm kind of digging it. So from an iron proximity perspective, looks good. 12th in this field in strokes gained approach, hitting fairways. If he can find the putter, Bermuda is his best surface. Now, he's not a good putter, but Bermuda is actually his best surface, which is not true for some of these other guys. So I really like the idea of getting some exposure to Norlander. And I think at 170 to 1, if you're taking some crazy long shot guys, I think he could make a lot of sense. So I will probably be betting Norlander. I'm not sure how much exposure you need to get in fantasy because it's 6,600. I'm not sure you need to get there unless you're using like Louis and Hideki or Louis and Webb or something like that. But maybe I'll have some lineups like that. But probably going to be overweight the field. I like Norlander a lot this week. Russell Henley is a guy I'm probably going to bet this week. So he's 30, 35 to 1, depending on the book that you're using. Second in this field in proximity, 150 to 175. He's a better Bermuda putter than a lot of these guys we're talking about. 7th in this field in strokes gained approach. He hits fairways. He's played well here in the past. number 1 in proximity with the wedges, like 8th. He's checking all the boxes for me. He's a guy that we talked about for a while, is kind of trending in the right direction. Then he kind of fell off for a little bit. Seems to be back. He missed the cut, I think, at the Open Championship, but he seems to be back. We'll see what ownership is. He's 9,400. That's, maybe price tag scares some people off. But I'm buying on Russell Henley this week. Hank Lebioda, rating out as the number 12th guy in my model. So he actually withdrew from the last event that he was in. I think he had a relative in the hospital, maybe COVID related. I'm not sure. But he's a guy that's been dialed in. He's been in absolutely fantastic form. I worry a little bit about the layoff. The thing that's going to hold him back too is the putter. So this is a guy I'm going to keep a really close eye on ownership. If he's going to be 25% owned again, I'm probably going to full fade him because he's played this event a couple times. I think he's lost strokes putting every single time. So, and lost big, not insignificantly. He is a much better bent grass putter. That's where he was doing a lot of his damage in recent weeks. Now he's gaining on approach in other areas, right? But to truly contend and maybe even not play yourself out of it, you have to be able to putt this week. So I'm really looking at what ownership is going to be on him because I do think it's a really sharp fade. He may come back and burn you, but I don't know. I think the community, maybe they've soured on him after the withdrawal, but I think a lot of folks are going to jump back in. His price is great. There's a lot of things to like about Lebioda. I think it's a really kind of sharp play to maybe stay away this week, even though he's rating out really well. Pivot plays, guys like Joel Damon, Ryan Moore, even in the upper sixes, Brian Stewart. These are guys that check a lot of boxes. Again, they don't necessarily putt well either, but they're guys that I think are, in the top half of this field in terms of iron play, and that goes a long way. So we're going to go, maybe take some shots on some of these lower 7K guys that might be lower owned. Gary Woodland is a guy that I might bet as well. He may not rate out as well statistically for this course. You think about kind of the plotter types like Webb and other folks that do well here. But on these shorter tracks, Gary Woodland gets to club down, right? He's not hitting driver on every hole, so he's more likely to hit the fairway. He's also been really good on approach of late. So he gained at the 3M Open. He is 14th in this field in strokes gained approach over the last 24 rounds, 19th in opportunities gained, 11th in birdie or better. These long par threes are not too kind to him. He's been struggling a bit on the par fives, which is kind of shocking. But these par fives are very gettable. I'm not too worried about it. That's why I'm not putting a ton of weight on it. I think Gary Woodland is a really sharp bet. When you think about all of the guys that have win equity in this field, Gary Woodland is a major champion. He's being priced with guys that have not won majors, haven't won at all, right? So he's 45-1, kind of like Gary Woodland this week. He was my big, bold call a couple weeks ago at the 3M Open, and he didn't let me down. So we'll kind of ride the Gary train. I think he played well last week, too, at the Barracuda. I think he holed out an eagle from the fairway. He is absolutely dialed in right now. So I really like the idea of playing some Gary Woodland this week. Other guys that I like, Kokrak has played well here in the past. I may sprinkle some of him in. I don't know that this course is necessarily like what you think about. It's the same logic, though, with Gary. You get to club down as a bomber, more likely to hit fairways, keep it dialed in with the irons, you'll be in good shape. So I don't mind Kokrak. I'm just not a big fan of the price tag. More kind of 7K pivots. I think Zach Johnson is actually kind of interesting this week. So he's gained an approach in 2 straight events. He is 3rd in this field on the short par 4s, 6th with in proximity from 125 to 150. He's a great Bermuda putter. I think Zach Johnson could be live. I'm not sure if I'm going to bet him, but I think he's 70-1. Could totally see it if you wanted to jump in on it. I'm just not sure I'm there from a betting perspective, but like the idea of getting some exposure in fantasy. And then Patton Kizzire will probably just keep riding the train. So he is number 1 in this field, birdie or better, number 1 in opportunities gained, 3rd in Bermuda putting. So stay hot, Mr. Kizzire. I will probably be betting you at 80-1. So let's see what happens. I think he's played well here in the past too. So hopefully a guy that flies under the radar a little bit, but I'm not sure he will. Other guys I like, Scott Stallings. Doc Redman, I think, is a smart bet, only because he's contended here. He's been in good form. He is, 18th in approach in this field. He's hitting fairways, which is great, and he finished, I think, 2nd or 3rd here last year. I think he's 130-1 on DraftKings right now. So that number may be being bet down, but I kind of like the idea of going back to Doc Redman. The price is great too, so good kind of cheap fantasy guy to get some exposure to. Other pivots, kind of like Sneds this week. Brant Sendeker's won here in the past. Good putter. Top half of this field and approach. There's a lot of reasons to maybe like Sneds, especially if he's going to be lower owned. He's basically the same price as someone like Hank Lebioda, but the difference is he can actually putt. So kind of like that. We'll see what ownership looks like on Mito Pereira. I think he might be the trendy guy this week. I think he's fine. Mark Hubbard's played well here in the past. I don't think anyone is going to talk about him, but he's pretty solid, hitting fairways. 30th in this field in strokes gained approach. He's actually a good Bermuda putter. So again, I like that. I'll probably get some exposure to Harold Varner as well. I'm not sure how much though, because I don't think he's in as good of form as he was earlier this year, but I think he had a really strong finish at Harbor Town, so that's kind of helping out his stats a little bit. It's a comp course, so I kind of like the idea of getting some exposure to him. Not sure I'm going to bet him because, I don't know. He's not grading out as well as some of these other guys, and every time he seems to get in contention, he kind of craps the bed. So, I don't know. Some guys just have it, right? They can kind of pull it together, get fired up, break through for the win. Other guys, again, it's unquantifiable, but anytime it seems like he gets in the mix, he kind of melts down. So he'd be on my short list, though. Then you get other guys that I'm just kind of sprinkling in here. I'm probably going to take a stab on Doug Gim again and just keep lighting money on fire, but the approach numbers are just so good. If you can just gain a couple strokes putting. So maybe it's a bias on my end, but he's basically the same guy as Ches Reavie. Just, I don't know. I kind of like him. I like the price. Shop around. You might be able to get a better number. Maybe something over 100 to 1 on him, and I think you could get away with that. The other guy that I'm betting for sure is Sanjay this week. So he's 30 to 1. Depending on Patrick Reed's withdrawal, that may have dropped the odds a little bit, but this is a Sanjay track. I'm less worried about, the Olympic stuff and not meddling with him because he's younger and gets another crack at it. He's finished really strong at this event in the past. He gained on approach at the WGC. As long as he can keep it in the fairway, get hot with the putter, he should be fine, right? So kind of like the idea of rolling with Sanjay this week to try and get his second PGA Tour win. Then again, just sprinkling in some more guys. Matt Kuchar, CT Pan, Chris Kirk. I think that's probably as far down. Maybe Zalatoris makes the cut for me. Kind of showed some life last week. I can't make sense of any of his stats. His proximity numbers suck, but he's 22nd in the field and approach, so I don't know. I may just take a stand and roll with Louis and Webb at the top. Could get an exposure to Willie Z, but I'm not sure if I'm there yet. So anyway, that is my model breakdown, some of the bets that I like, some of the DraftKings plays that I'm looking at. Stay tuned tomorrow for a final update. We'll recap my betting card, take a look at DraftKings strategy, how to build some lineups, look at ownership, all of that fun stuff. So stay tuned. Hopefully you guys learned something. As always, if you like the content, give the video a like, subscribe to my channel. Shout out in the comments, much appreciated. Gotta love the interactivity here in our small little community, but hopefully one thing you guys are getting from this, I know a lot of other content creators out there are trying to get it out fast, and obviously there's some incentive for them to do that, but I'm really trying to get it right to me, and I also think it's kind of an advantage to see what everyone else is doing too, so where you're being a little different. So I may be a little bit behind the pace. I also have a day job, but the other side of that is too, I'm really looking at this stuff and studying it and trying to get things right. And 2 outright wins in the last 5-6 weeks, I think that says a lot, right? And we've hit, I think, 7 or 8 this year. So feeling pretty good about the process. So basically taking the same approach every week, trying to get better. Hopefully that's coming through. You guys have some results to show for it. So like I said, as always, like the video, subscribe to my channel. We'll talk tomorrow. Thanks, guys.